All right. So, Vivek, it's always such a pleasure to have you on filmyshow.me.com. I think, the
Thank you.
bond that we've
Likewise.
had as an interviewer and journalist has really stemmed from even when we began our platform. And I think it's very special because IPF is a very highly anticipated show. You're playing a cop. I know you've played cops before, I think, in your career before, but here in mainstream Hindi cinema, it's quite a fresh experience for you. So talk to me. This collab with Rohit Shetty. I'm sure it's been a long time coming, right?
Yeah, it's funny, during the promotions, actually, Rohit reminded me, he's like, you've forgotten, but when you were shooting for company and you hadn't even started your career, it was just their first film. Ajay Devgan called him up and he said, listen, there's this kid, he's Sureshji's son and he seems like a good performer. Why don't you come meet him and talk to him about that script that we are planning? So Rohit came and actually met me for a two hero kind of film story, which was supposed to be Ajay and me, and that never got made, actually. That film never
Hmm.
actually happened. Script didn't get made. But then we connected, we became friends, and we stayed connected more for social causes. I do a lot of work through my foundation with our police force. So we do a lot of stuff for uh, tobacco de-addiction drives with Mumbai Police. We work with them for free cancer screenings and tests, to do health checkups for them, their families, their family members. So in all of these, Rohit's the first person I call, and he's always there. He's always there supporting all these good causes. And we all used to jam, say, let's do something together. He's like, yeah. But then he always said that, look, the day I have a role which does justice to your performance and your performance does justice to the role, I will call you. And he called me and he said,
Okay.
here's the script. Vikram Bakshi is the character. I started writing it 3 years ago. And from the day I started writing it, I thought of you. Vivek Oberoi will play this role. I was so touched. I was so emotional. I was like, I don't even want to read the script, man. I'm doing it. It's like, no, 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 you got to read it. But it was an amazing script. So
Right. And I
good.
think even on Amazon Prime, we're so used to seeing you in Inside Edge as a very dark character. And obviously here you are, from being on the outside of the law to being the law defender here. For you as an artist, when it comes to, coming in and out of roles, how much of a baggage do you kind of feel on you as a person? Or do you not feel a baggage anymore? Have you learned that art to sort of disassociate from each character as you go along?
I would love to sound super fancy and come across as like, oh, I've figured it out. I'm so zen. But I found a simpler way actually, and it accidentally happened to me. I found that when I go back home to my wife, my children, my mother, my father, um, it just switches off. Everything I'm carrying, the heaviest, most intense characters, they kind of stay with me even after I've taken the makeup off. They stay with me when I'm driving back home. But the minute I enter home, I turn off my phone and it's all out of my system. And it's beautiful because you need that kind of catharsis. You need all of this to stay out of your system because some of it is very intense. You as a thinking actor, as somebody who observes, you start to empathize with the character's journey. You start to imagine yourself in their shoes. You start to imagine what would I do if I was in this character's place. That's what good acting is, right? So you put yourself in the shoes of that character. And to peel yourself out of that, sometimes it's difficult. You get emotional some days. Some days you draw into something deep and you can't stop. The emotion doesn't stop. So
Hmm.
I was doing a scene in a film where the character in a series where the character loses his child, and just the thought of that happening to me as a father took me into such a dark place that it took me an hour after the scene to get out of it.
Hmm.
So emotional.
Yeah, I can imagine. And it's interesting because I feel like cops, I think not just in India, but even in the UK, there's been a bit of a backlash, actually, to be very honest,
Yeah,
especially with the cops in the UK. I'm sure you've heard about,
yeah.
several really horrible cases that have happened. And obviously in India, we've heard so many stories, especially in 2020, of what went down in the industry and all. Um, it's interesting because one might look at it as a way of them glorifying the cops, but then also one may also see the series, even though it is there to entertain, as a way to perhaps, I guess, restore that faith of the public within the police force.
Beautifully put.
How, yeah, how do you measure it actually? Because there's kind of two sets of imagery that's kind of
Well,
portrayed
look,
there.
this is always a reality. Like whenever one person's story's hero is another person's story's villain. You know what I'm saying? So if you're on the receiving end, being a criminal, you're gonna hate the cops. But if you're a guy who's done nothing and you're innocent, you're gonna like the cops because they're protecting you. It's when the people don't go about their dharma, right? Their place in the civilization, in the society, what they're meant to do. When they break that and they go out there and do something aside from that. So cops who are framing people or abusing power or using their position of power for corruption, those are the kind of people that are the anomaly and not the rule. And that's important to recognize. So what I like about the series was Vikram Bakshi, the character I play, kind of humanizes the cops, puts a human element to it, right? You're transported into their lives. He's a family man, he's got a wife, he's got a kid. Um, Even his team, his seniors are like the elders of his family. Sid's character, Kabir, is like a younger brother. The team is somebody that he really looks out for and would gladly take a bullet for them. He's that kind of guy. There's a scene I remember when I was doing, which Rohit wrote beautifully. I mean, the writers wrote it and we shot it, which is what the trailer begins with. I don't know if you've seen it, where the
Yeah,
voiceover
yeah, yeah.
starts. Um, that scene was very moving to me because it felt like, okay, there's been an attack on something that's most sacred to you, your nation, that you're sworn to protect, your city, that
Hmm.
houses your friends and your family, and your identity is that of the protector. And you failed because they blew, up your city. What he speaks after that to enthuse confidence, yet command his troops for the counterattack, those lines were so powerful. And I personally had goosebumps while doing those lines. You normally have goosebumps when you listen or watch something, but I felt it. I felt it in my heart. I felt so riled with emotion and a sense of nobility and purpose, and at the same time, deep sense of patriotic fervor.
Yeah. And it's interesting you said this actually, because I feel even if we look back when you began in 2002, right, with Company and Saathiya, obviously Saathiya was a complete game changer, dynamics of the career. And you know very well how much I love that film. Um, but I feel like again, in your filmography also, one thing I've observed is that there's a very interesting strand in you as an actor as well, Vivek. There's this sense of you that's also very hot-headed, who's very I guess passionate in both senses. You can be the gentle lover, the very diehard, romantic person, as well as that very passionate Josh Bhara person in whatever capacity, even if it is as a villain also. So passion is something which I feel you've always inculcated through your performances and your characters. Is this something you genuinely have manifested through the scripts and perhaps the work that you've always wanted to pursue? Is a sense of passion in every of your character, in whichever form it's in?
Look, the way I look at it is that's how I am as a person. And no matter what you do, unless the character is that specific and is not meant to be passionate. Say I was playing somebody who is a jaded drug addict, bored with life, waiting to die. I couldn't be passionate about that. You know what I'm saying? But
Hmm.
anybody who's real as a character works better when you put a little of you in it. And it also works in the reverse. Over the years, over 60, 65 characters that I've played in my career, a bit of them, because I'm constantly thinking about the decisions they've made, the journey they're taking, the emotional choices they're making, and correlating it, they influence me. So it's funny in a way that you have almost like you become a collage of the characters you play. Little bits of you, pixels of those characters are within you. And you
Hmm.
put in a little bit, you breathe in a little bit of you in those characters.
Right. No, absolutely. And I'm glad you talked about patriotism because I feel like, it's kind of it's interesting actually because obviously if you go on social media there's like a massive discourse happening about it. There's obviously people that are saying, oh god, it's jingoistic, saying J people frown at the fact you say Jai Hind. I've seen literally people close their ears and I've never understood why, because I think it's always good to be proud of the country you come from, right? And I think one thing that Rohit sir's films, especially when they are kind of on that sort of a feel, even Suryavanshi for that same matter, I kind of enjoyed the film because I think it was very unapologetic about what he was trying to say. How do you deal with the reactions towards that? Does it impact you a lot as an artist, especially when it comes to the whole social media commentary that goes on?
No, not at all. I filter that out because it's mostly rubbish. It's uninformed. It's trolling for the sake of trolling, borrowed ideas. I look at it and think, come on, guys, develop your own opinion. There used to be a time where you would read, you would research, you would have two sides of a conversation, and then you'd form an opinion. You would be open to argument and discussion and open to look at a perspective towards it. The second thing is that I come from an armed forces family background, right? My nana was a Mahavir Chakra awardee. He's
Wow.
fought multiple battles for the country. He's won a Paramveer Seva medal, and retired, as a general. So for me, I grew up listening to those stories of battle, of India's wars, and how our braves sacrificed everything for that. So for me, that Jai Hind, I feel it. It's rousing. But for people who don't connect with it that way, I just want to say that when you look at a celebration of anything, anything that is celebrating a sense of identity, pride, culture, you should be accepting to it, as long as it's not, being done by pulling somebody else down. And if I say my country is the greatest in the world and your country is nonsense, it's a banana republic, that's a negative statement. But if I feel pride, I feel like I love this country, it's the greatest country in the world, why would you have something negative to say about that? That's how I feel.
Yeah.
And if I'm celebrating that thought, why am I not allowed to in a modern free world and society?
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. And I think it just makes the conversation lesser democratic, isn't it? Because I feel like there's always this whole
Yeah.
boycott movement and,
Yeah.
ways of shutting down people rather than actually wanting to encourage a conversation. I think that's perhaps a very
Also,
big.
these are borrowed opinions. When you don't have a sense of identity yourself and you're yet to develop one, you tend to borrow stuff. You tend to borrow ideas, tend to borrow conflicts, tend to borrow battles to fight. The good fortune and the bad fortune at the same time of the current generation is that they've never had to go out there and really fight wars. They've never
Mm,
really had to fight wars in the physical sense of wars, or wars that we were fighting while growing up in an emerging country.
yeah.
Country's really prosperous now. Society's moved ahead. The difficulties that, the stories when we used to roll our eyes about parents telling us, oh, you had no idea I had to walk 3 kilometers to get to school, stuff like that. We laugh at those stories back then. So they don't even relate to that anymore. When life is easy and you don't have anything to fight for, when you don't have any conflict, you borrow them. You borrow
Mm,
conflicts that are not yours because you don't feel anything inside. So you borrow ideas. And that's the sad part. That's what I tell young people. If you want to feel it, go down to the less fortunate. Come with me. Work with me in the villages. See what real world problems are. See how
mm,
difficult it is for them. Things that you take for granted is so tough for them. Then you'll have something to fight for that actually adds value, that actually
sure.
has purpose.
Sure. And on a final note, actually, because I really want to ask you this question. I know we've really pushed for time, but I really need to ask you this. So, if you see last year, there's been an influx of films which really introspect where we have gone wrong as a human race. Of course, the socio-political climate is just more of a dressing, right? I mean, we had Scoop last year, you had Kerala Story, you had Banda, so many amazing titles last year that really introspected on us and our identity as human beings, and even, of course, the national identity too. Uh, do you feel Indian police force, through mainstream commercial entertainment also will perhaps help address the internal sort of side of things and perhaps offer a sense of resolution too?
But I think the primary purpose of the show is to entertain, right? But I
Yeah.
think a secondary purpose is going to be that you're going to have a little more respect for your police. You're going to turn around and say, oh gosh, these guys really have a tough job. And I respect the sacrifices they make, and understand the situations they have to deal with. So I think you'll
Mm,
have a little more respect for your cops, and I'm hoping that that's what happens. I'm hoping that we acknowledge, because otherwise, sweeping everybody across a single brush stroke, saying that, oh, they're all corrupt, oh, they're all incompetent, oh, they're all, abusing power, abusing the system. That's not really fair because there's a lot of them that are upholding it and keeping it together. If they were all abusing the system, there would be no system because they're the gatekeepers of the system.
Yeah, exactly. No, absolutely. Very well said. Well, look, Vivek, it's always such a pleasure to have a chat with you, and thank you so much for taking the time to
Likewise.
speak with me. And congratulations on Indian Police Form on Amazon Prime. Can't wait to check it out.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks, Vivek.
Take care, man.
Start.
Bye. So ever since I watched Celebrity Big Brother, it's been on my bucket list to finally speak with Shilpa Shetty, and I'm so glad, thanks to Indian Police Force, we're making that happen. So Shilpa, thank you so much for joining me on Film Me Show Me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, look, Shilpa, I think, look, 30 years into the business, a huge congratulations, first of all. It's the first of many, actually. It's Rohit Shetty's first female cop. It's your first series with him, your first, I think, your first Amazon Prime original as well. So, talk to me. After all these years of working hard in this industry, how do you deal with first experiences? Do you feel nervous at all?
Of course, every day makes me nervous. Every day at work makes me nervous as an actor. Um, and I think it's because I approach my work like that. I still have that excitement when I'm playing a new or a different character. Uh, and that will never stop till the last day. And the day the excitement ceases, I just feel that'll be the end of me, as an actor. Then I won't enjoy doing what I'm doing. So when I go on the sets, I still want to feel excited. I still want to feel like, oh my God, am I going to be able to do this? Because that's what pushes me, to do better work.
Sure, absolutely. I think one thing that I have noticed a lot about your works in particular is that there's a sense of innocence and a sense of effervescence that you bring to the performances. एक मासूमियत है, but also because of the maybe due to patriarchal figures or patriarchal turn of events, it often, you're kind of conflicted with kind of maintaining that innocence as well as fighting back. That sense of fighting back is something which I've always seen in your works. So when it comes to this sort of work you've done, and then it comes to your role in Indian Police Force, how much of that was intrinsic in your decision as an artist when you decided to play this role?
Well, that's a very deep question, I must say. Um, very well observed also. Yes, I think I am inherently a fighter, and I'm someone who will not give up easily. So I try my best to, I have this quality in me, strange that people, like if you have noticed it, I'm sure other people also must have noticed it. I feel like that innocence has to be there in an actor, because the minute you come across cocky, people won't like you. So I'm just so happy that that child in me is still alive, and um, I'm able to convince people that there is a sense of je ne sais pas quoi in my approach, um, and yeah, that's what keeps me going. As far as this character is concerned, yes, she literally is a fighter, because she's in a man's world. We're outnumbered in the forces by men, and to be playing a character that's in a powerful position um, was not difficult to do, because that was the character. But due credit must be given to Rohit Shetty, who projected and presented the character, with a certain sense of heroism, and treated the character as a character and as that position without any gender bias. That's very difficult to do. So I think that whole fighter in me came out, like even the whole approach. She's a fighter, as a character. And I think that seeps in from my uh, personal life, because I am a fighter in my personal life. And I think that is something that came into the role.
Sure. I think it's wonderful because we're at a phase where we're seeing so many beautiful depictions of female cops in the Hindi landscape, like Shefali in Delhi Crime, Rani in Mardani. Now, you, of course, in Indian Police Force. How positive do you feel about the way we're seeing action-oriented roles for women in Hindi mainstream entertainment now?
I think audiences are ready, and filmmakers not just have the gumption, but also the budgets to put together to make a film like that, and or to put content like that together. So I think it's a great time for actors, um, especially the women, to explore different roles and to dabble in action. And funny enough, I wanted to actually produce an action film 14 years ago. And I put uh, a stop to it because we didn't have the budgets given to us to, make it um, with the scale that we wanted to. So I'm happy in this time and age, people aren't thinking twice.
Hmm. And Shilpa, I mean, I remember when I watched your sister Shamita, because I've rooted for her so much on Big Boss, and I've had so many beautiful interactions with her. And the one thing I love about you both is this sense of grace and dignity. And even when I watched the trailer of Indian Police Force, what grace or dignity ubhar ke bahar aa rahi thi. So what would you say really has given you and helped you maintain that grace and dignity over the years?
I think it's come from the fact that it's been inculcated in us, and it comes from I think from our middle class values. Dignity is of paramount importance, and that's something that has been taught to both our sisters. Um, and I think it's kind of embedded in our subconscious because my mother is a very dignified woman,
Hmm.
and she's always told us that in whatever situation, you should never lose your dignity or your grace. Grace under fire goes a long way. And I think whether it be Shamita or me, we know that we deal with us, with situations, uh, but we can't stoop down to a low level where we feel that there's a loss of dignity.
Yeah,
So I'd rather lose that battle, you know,
sure.
than to lose my
Sure.
dignity.
And last few words about anyone watching Indian Police Force, and especially like we said, because you are the first female cop of Rohit Shetty's cop universe, what would you like to tell audiences as well in the UK specifically?
Watch it for sure, entertainment. Watch it because it's Rohit Shetty's, um, Sidharth Malhotra's, and Shilpa Shetty's first OTT debut. Watch it for the fact that I have uh, done some really kick-ass action. And yes, I'm really excited that people are going to be introduced to a new avatar with Tara Shetty, and I hope they appreciate it. It's releasing on the 19th of Jan. Do catch it on Amazon Prime.
Absolutely. And I'm hoping this is going to be another super, super wala performance from you, Shilpa. Thank you so much for joining me on Filmation Me. And thank you for always being such a beautiful, graceful, and dignified personality. It's always a sheer pleasure to watch you on screen.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye bye.